Let me tell you something about high-pressure gas pipelines. They scream. They don't scream with a voice you can hear with your ears. But if you've been staring at the telemetry data for 10 years like I have, you feel the vibration in your teeth. It's a low-frequency hum, a constant threat of violence contained by 3 in of steel and about 2 million lines of code that I wrote while sitting on a bucket in a trailer in West Texas. My name is Caroline. On my HR file, it says Senior Systems Architect. In reality, I'm the janitor, the mechanic, and the goddamn priestess who keeps the $100,000 an hour revenue stream flowing. I smell like stale coffee and ozone. I don't wear the pants suits the new HR girls wear. I wear jeans and steel-toed boots because when a server rack overheats at 3 a.m., I'm not calling a vendor. I'm kicking the door open and fixing it myself. I've been here since the dirt was fresh. Henry Cole, the old man, the founder, God rest his chain-smoking soul, hired me when this company was just a frantic idea and a pile of debt. Henry wasn't one of these modern CEOs who microdoses mushrooms and talks about synergy. Henry was a bastard, but he was our bastard. He knew the name of every valve on the line and the name of every kid in my family. By the way, if you're into stories about corporate empires burning to the ground because of hubris, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps the algorithm find more trash fires like this one. Just takes a second, unlike the 10 years I wasted here. Thanks. Anyway, back to the grime. Henry treated me like the daughter he never had, mostly because his actual son, Derek, was too busy crashing Porsches in the Hamptons to learn the difference between a pressure regulator and a prostate exam. Henry and I built the heart. That's what we called the central control system. It wasn't pretty. It was a Frankenstein monster of legacy code patches and digital duct tape. But it worked. It sang. It printed money. When Henry died last year, the funeral was a spectacle. Black subs weeping mistresses, the works. I stood in the back wearing my good blazer, feeling like the ground had opened up. I knew the wolves were coming. I just didn't expect the lead wolf to be wearing a suit that cost more than my car and a smile that looked like it was bought at a discount veneer shop in Miami. Derek took the throne 2 days later. The transition was about as subtle as a brick through a stained glass window. The first thing Derek did was remodel the executive floor. He tore out the mahogany and put in glass. Everything had to be transparent. That's corporate speak for I want to watch you squirm. He brought in a team of consultants, kids who looked like they were born inside a Patagonia vest to optimize workflows. I sat in my corner office, which was actually just a glorified closet next to the server farm, and watched the rot set in. It wasn't the fast kind of rot. It was the slow creeping kind. The kind that starts with a missed meeting invite and ends with a knife in your back. Caroline. Derek said to me during his first week. He was leaning against my doorframe holding a green juice that looked like pond scum. This office, it's very dark, very analog. It's next to the cooling units, Derek, I said, not looking up from my monitors. I need to hear the fans, he chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. Right. The fans, we're looking to migrate everything to the cloud by fourth quarter. Get away from this heavy metal vibe, make it sleek. You can't put the pipeline control logic on the cloud, Derek, I said, finally turning to look at him. The latency alone would cause a pressure buildup in the Oklahoma Junction that would blow a crater the size of a football field. Physics doesn't care about your cloud strategy. He blinked. His smile twitched. That was the moment. That was the exact second I became the enemy. I saw it in his eyes. He didn't see a veteran engineer saving him from a lawsuit. He saw a relic. He saw a stain on his shiny new vision board. He saw legacy tech. And let me tell you, in the corporate world, legacy is just a polite word for dead. I went back to my screens. I watched the numbers tick by. Pressure stable, flow rate optimal, the heart was beating steady, but I knew deep down in my gut that the cardiac arrest was coming, and it wasn't going to be caused by a blocked valve. It was going to be caused by a blocked ego. Disrespect started small. It always does. It's like rust on a fender. First it's just a bubble in the paint, then you poke it and your finger goes right through. They stopped inviting me to the Monday morning ops meetings, the meetings I had run for 6 years. When I asked the new VP of operations, a guy named Brad, who thought Skewel was a sequel to a movie, he just shrugged. Derek wants to keep the room focused on future state. Caroline didn't want to bore you with the visionary stuff. Visionary stuff? I repeated, tasting bile. Brad, if the pressure sensors in Sector 4 aren't calibrated manually every Tuesday, the future state is going to be a fireball visible from space. We have an app for that now, Brad smiled. They didn't have an app. They had a dashboard made by a 20-year-old intern that showed pretty colors but didn't actually talk to the hardware. I knew this because I checked the logs. I was still fixing things in the background silently like a ghost haunting the machine. I was scrubbing their errors, patching their leaks, keeping the lights on while they sat in glass rooms talking about disruption. I should have let it blow up then. I really should have. But the pipeline was my baby. You don't let your baby die just because the babysitter is a sociopath. At least not yet. I kept my head down. I drank my terrible office coffee. I chain-smoked menthols in the parking lot, staring up at the gray sky, wondering how long I could hold the weight of the sky on my shoulders. I was the Atlas of this company, and Derek was currently busy trying to chip away at my kneecaps with a golden chisel. It was about 3 months in when I realized they weren't just ignoring me, they were erasing me. My name started disappearing from reports. The Cole method of load balancing, which I invented, was renamed dynamic flow optimization. I was becoming a ghost in my own house. But the thing about ghosts is they see everything and they remember where the bodies are buried, or in my case, where the root keys are hidden. I sat there in the dark listening to the hum of the servers, and I felt a cold hard knot form in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was clarity. I looked at the terminal window blinking with a green cursor. Okay, I whispered to the room. You want sleek? You want modern? You want to see what happens when the legacy decides to retire? I took a drag of my imaginary cigarette, exhaled slowly, and went back to work. But I wasn't fixing bugs anymore. I was documenting them, every single crack in the foundation. I was building a dossier of doom because if I was going down, I was going to make sure the crash was spectacular. The thing about incompetence is that it's loud. Competence is quiet. Competence is a silent server fan. Incompetence is a frantic meeting where 6 people in 3-piece suits scream about synergy because nobody knows how to turn on the projector. Derek's new regime was deafening. By month 4, the office looked like an Apple store had an orgy with away work. All the cubicle walls were gone, replaced by collaborative pods. Do you know what a collaborative pod is? It's a table where you can smell your coworker's tuna sandwich while you try to code a safety override for a volatile gas line. I stayed in my cave. They hadn't taken my office yet, mostly because nobody else wanted to sit next to the industrial AC units, but the invasion was knocking at my door. Derek brought in a consulting firm called Nexus Horizon or Vertical Leap, or some other nonsense generated by a random word algorithm. They were led by a guy named Tyler. Tyler was 26, had teeth that were blindingly white, and wore loafers with no socks. Tyler's job was to audit the tech stack. He came into my office one Tuesday holding an iPad like it was the 10 Commandments. Hey, Carol, he said. My name is Carolyn. It's on the door, so we're looking at the repo and we noticed a lot of unstructured data handling in the core kernel. We're thinking of scrapping it for a blockchain solution. I stared at him. I took a slow sip of my coffee, which tasted like mud and spite. Tyler, I said, my voice sounding like gravel in a blender. The unstructured data is the raw telemetry from the pressure valves. It comes in at 4 terabytes a second. If you put that on a blockchain, the transaction time will be longer than the heat death of the universe. The pipe will burst before the first block is verified. Tyler blinked. He tapped his iPad. Right. Well, Derek feels like blockchain is the future. It plays well with the investors. Physics doesn't have shareholders, Tyler, I said. And don't call me Carol, he left, making a note on his screen. I knew what he wrote. Resistant to change, hostile. The isolation ramped up. A critical report on system latency went out on a Thursday. Usually I'm the first signature on that. This time I didn't even get a BCC. I found a copy in the recycle bin near the copier. Yes, I dig through trash now. That's where the truth is. And saw that my name had been replaced by Ops Team. Ops Team was Tyler and a couple of interns who thought Python was just a snake. But the real dagger came during the quarterly all-hands meeting. Derek loved these. He'd stand on a stage in the cafeteria, microphone headset on like he was giving a TED talk, pacing back and forth. Slides behind him were all stock photos of people shaking hands and rockets taking off. I stood in the back leaning against the wall, arms crossed. We are shedding our skin, Derek announced, throwing his hands up. We are moving from an infrastructure company to a technology company. No more old ways, no more dead weight. He clicked the remote. A slide came up. It was a before and after chart of the IT structure. On the before side was a pixelated clip art of a dinosaur. On the after side, a sleek rocket ship. The room chuckled. We've spent millions maintaining legacy systems that were frankly embarrassing, Derek said, grinning. He looked right at the back of the room, right at me. Systems that were held together by duct tape and nostalgia. Well, folks, the nostalgia is over. We're automating the architecture roles. By next quarter, the AI Oversight Committee will handle all core logic. The room applauded. They were clapping for my funeral. I felt the heat rise up my neck. It wasn't shame. It was rage. Pure distilled 100p proof rage. I had spent Christmas Eves in this building. I had missed my niece's baptism because a compressor blew in Tulsa. I had sacrificed my marriage to my first husband because I was married to the pipeline, and this trust fund baby was calling my life's work a dinosaur. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I just smiled. A tight, thin smile that didn't reach my eyes. After the meeting, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, buzzing like an angry hornet. Okay, I said to my reflection. You want to automate me? Let's see how your AI handles the dead man's switch. I walked back to my office. The hallway was full of chatter. People were energized by Derek's speech. They were drinking the Kool-Aid. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the command line. I didn't do anything malicious. I didn't plant a virus. I didn't delete files. I just checked the authentication protocols for the master control node. The system was designed so that every 48 hours a specific encrypted key had to be entered manually by a senior architect-level user to authorize the pressure variance. Was a safety feature Henry and I installed to prevent remote hacking. If the key wasn't entered, the system assumed a hostile takeover or a catastrophic failure. It would default to safe mode. Safe mode meant shut down. All valves closed, all pumps stopped, total lockout until a hard manual reboot, which took 3 days and a team of 20 engineers. I looked at the schedule. The next authorization was due in 3 days. Usually I have a script that auto-renews it because I'm the one logged in. I opened the script. I looked at the code. If user equal to Caroline C renew O function, I hovered my finger over the delete key. Not yet. I needed them to do it. I needed them to be the ones to pull the trigger. I needed the fingerprints on the murder weapon to be theirs. I closed the window. 5 minutes later, an email pinged. It was from HR, subject mandatory meeting 4 p.m. today. I knew what it was. You don't get a mandatory meeting at 400 p.m. on a Friday unless you're getting walked out. I lit a cigarette, an actual one this time, right there in the office. The smoke detector beeping above me was just another alarm they would ignore. Come and get me, boys, I whispered. The HR office smelled like lavender sanitizer and lies. I walked in at 4 p.m. sharp. Derek was there, sitting in a chair that looked too small for his ego. Beside him was the new HR director, a woman named Linda, who smiled so hard I thought her face might crack. Have a seat, Carolyn, Linda said, gesturing to a generic gray chair. I sat. I didn't cross my legs. I sat square, hands on my knees like I was bracing for impact. So Derek started clasping his hands. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was looking at a spot on the wall just above my left ear. Been doing some restructuring as per the announcement today. You're firing me, I said flat. No question mark. Derek flinched. He hated confrontation. That's why he hired consultants to do his thinking. We're transitioning your role. The systems you manage are being sunsetted. We need a fresh perspective for the cloud migration. You're firing the only person who knows how the encryption handshake works on the Tulsa mainline. I said, we have excellent documentation. Linda chimed in, sliding a thick envelope across the desk, and we're prepared to offer a very generous severance package. 6 months' pay, full benefits for a year in exchange for standard NDA and a non-disparagement agreement. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Derek. You really think documentation is enough? I asked quietly. Derek, your dad didn't write manuals, he wrote code on napkins. The documentation you have is 5 years out of date. System runs on patches I wrote last week. We have Tyler, Derek said, his voice hardening. And we have the new AI oversight. We'll be fine, Caroline. Frankly, your negativity has been a drag on the culture. There it was. My competence was negativity. My warnings were drags on culture. I reached for the pen. You want me to sign this? I asked. Yes, Linda said. And we'll need your badge and laptop immediately. Security will escort you out. I uncapped the pen. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Okay, I said. I signed. Derek looked surprised. He expected a fight. He expected me to scream, to beg, to throw a chair. He wanted the drama so he could justify the decision. See, she's crazy, she's emotional, but I gave him nothing. Just ink on paper. Is that it? Derek asked, almost disappointed. That's it, I said. I stood up. I just need to grab my purse from my office and log out. Security will accompany you, Linda said. 2 large men in polyester uniforms were waiting outside the door. They followed me down the hall. I walked past the open workspaces. People stopped talking as I passed. They knew the dead man walking parade. I kept my head high, staring straight ahead. We got to my office, my closet. "Don't touch the computer," one of the guards said. "Just personal items." "I have to log out," I said calmly. "Unless you want my user profile active on the network." "That's a security violation." The guard hesitated. He looked at the other guy. They didn't know the protocol. They were hired muscle, not it. "Fine," the first one said. "Make it quick." I sat down. My screen was still active. The command line was blinking. I didn't delete anything. I didn't deploy a virus. I simply typed one command: logout user hard revoke all tokens. This command does exactly what it says. It logs me out. But because I was the root architect, my session acted as the heartbeat for the system's active security clearance. As long as I was logged in, even in the background, the system knew Mother is home. By revoking all tokens, I was telling the system Mother has left the building. The system was programmed to wait exactly 10 minutes for a relog from a root user. If no root user logged in, it initiated the lockdown protocol. I hit enter. The screen went black. Then the login prompt appeared. I stood up. I grabbed my purse. I took my framed photo of Henry Cole off the desk. "All done," I said. "Badge," the guard demanded. I unclipped it from my belt. The plastic felt warm in my hand. I dropped it into his palm. "Good luck, boys," I said. "You're going to need it." I walked out of that office for the last time. It was 4:15 p.m. The timer was running. Tick-tock. I walked through the lobby, past the polished glass, past the reception desk with the $5,000 flower arrangement. Derek was standing there chatting with Tyler, laughing about something. Probably about how easy it was to get rid of the old hag. Derek saw me. He raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. "Enjoy retirement, Caroline," he called out. I stopped. I turned. The guards were right behind me. "My dad's company isn't your vacation spot, sweetheart," Derek sneered, emboldened by his audience. "Pack up." I smiled. A real smile this time. It was the smile of a demolition expert watching the fuse burn down to the last inch. "The pipeline shuts down in 10 minutes, I said. My voice was calm. Carrying across the lobby. "Good luck," Derek laughed. Tyler laughed. The receptionist giggled dramatic to the end. Derek shook his head. "Get her out of here." I walked through the revolving doors and into the humid afternoon. The air smelled like exhaust and rain. It smelled like freedom. I walked to my beat-up Ford F-150. I got in. I didn't start the engine. I checked my watch. 4:18 p.m., 7 minutes left. I reached into the glove box and pulled out a fresh pack of Marlboro. I packed them against the steering wheel. Thwack, thack, thwack. I lit one up, cracked the window, and leaned back. I wasn't going anywhere. I wanted to watch the lights go out. Sitting in my truck, the vibration of the engine was gone, but the hum in my head was still there. I pulled out my phone. I had one last little grenade to throw. I opened my personal email app. I had a draft saved. It was addressed to the entire board of directors with Derek and his cronies CC'd. Subject, for reference, only system dependency matrix attached, was a single PDF. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't a manifesto. It was a simple color-coded chart showing the hierarchy of the company's control systems. At the top was the cloud. Below that, the API layer, below that the server clusters, and below that, supporting the entire pyramid like the world-bearing turtle, was a single red box labeled Root Architect Session. Carolyn C. I hit send. 4:23 p.m., 2 minutes remaining. Inside the glass tower, I imagined the scene. Derek was probably popping champagne. Tyler was probably explaining to an intern how they were going to leverage the synergy of the new paradigm. I knew the rhythm of the pipeline better than my own heartbeat. Right now, the pumps in Sector 7 were pushing 40,000 psi of natural gas toward the distribution hub. The sensors were pinging the server every 100 milliseconds asking, "Are we safe? Is the operator authorized?" For the last 8 minutes, the server had been replying "Session terminated." Waiting RE at 10 minutes. The answer changes to unsafe. Initiating containment. 4:25 p.m. I took a long drag of my cigarette and blew the smoke toward the building. "Boom," I whispered. It wasn't an explosion. That's Hollywood. Real catastrophes are silent at first. Inside the building, the first thing that happened was the lights. The office lighting was tied to the grid management system to save power. When the containment protocol hits, prioritizes the emergency circuits. I saw the lobby lights flicker. Then they went out. The emergency red floodlights kicked on. I chuckled. Step 1, ambience. Then I saw movement. The security guards at the front desk grabbed their radios. People started walking toward the glass windows, looking confused. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Greg, one of the junior engineers. He was a good kid. Kept his head down. "Greg. Ooh. Did you do something?" All the screens just turned red. I didn't reply. Inside the ops center, the war room, as Derek called it, the mood must have shifted from celebration to confusion instantly. The massive wall of monitors, usually displaying green flow lines and happy metrics, would have flashed a single message. Critical error, authentication timeout, system lockdown initiated. And then the sound. The sound of money dying. The pipeline didn't just stop, it slammed shut. Valves the size of Volkswagen Beetles slammed closed across 3 states, the pumps sensing the blockage cut power to avoid blowing gaskets. The sudden silence in the control room would be deafening. No hum, no fan noise, just the beep 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 of the alarm. Derek was probably shouting at Tyler. "What is that? Turn it off." Tyler would be tapping frantically on his iPad, realizing that his blockchain solution didn't have a button for, "Oh God, make it stop." I watched from the parking lot. I saw Derek run into the lobby, his tie loose. He was yelling at the receptionist. He was waving his arms. He looked out the window. He saw my truck. I saw him freeze. I raised my hand, holding my cigarette between 2 fingers, and gave him a little wave. My phone buzzed again. "Greg, dude, the pressure readings are 0. The pumps are offline. Finance is freaking out. They say we're losing $1,600 a minute. You tell them to check the math. It's actually $1,666.666 repeating." I lean back. The show was just starting. The thing about a pipeline is that it's not just a tube. It's a cash register. When it's running, money pours in. When it stops, money doesn't just stop coming in. It starts catching fire. Penalties for non-delete. SLA breaches. Emergency shutdown fines from the EPA. It had been 10 minutes since the shutdown. That's roughly $16,000 in revenue gone, plus probably another $50,000 in penalties racking up. My phone was vibrating so hard it was dancing across the dashboard. Calls from company mainline, calls from Derek Mobile, calls from Linda HR. I let it dance. I wasn't on the clock. I was unemployed, and unemployed people don't take work calls. I cracked my window down a bit more. I could hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Probably the fire department automatically dispatched because of the sudden pressure drop alerts inside the building. The panic was mutating. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was terror. I knew exactly what was happening in the server room because I had designed the panic protocols. Brad, the VP of operations, would be screaming at the CICE admins. "Reboot it, just turn it off and on again." They would try. It would hit the manual reset on the server racks. The fans would spin up. The lights would blink green for a second and then access denied. Root credentials required for cold start. You see, a cold start after a lockdown isn't like restarting your laptop. The system assumes it was shut down because of a threat. It demands the highest level of authority to prove the threat is gone. That authority was me. I pictured Tyler, the consultant. He'd be sweating through his cashmere sweater. He'd be typing commands he found on Stack Overflow, getting nothing but syntax error in response. I checked the time. 4:45 p.m., 30 minutes. $50,000 revenue loss. Finally, I picked up my phone, not to answer, but to check the stocks. The market hadn't reacted yet, but the rumor mill moves fast. A new text from Greg. "Greg, Derek is screaming at Brad. Brad is crying. Literally crying. They tried to bypass the O using the admin override. The system flagged it as an intrusion attempt and doubled the lockout timer." "Good job, Elle," I smirked. Never tried to brute force a ladyboys. I could see figures running around in the lobby now. The board members were likely calling in. The CFO, a woman named Marcus who actually had a brain, would be looking at the numbers and realizing this wasn't a glitch. This was a hemorrhage. Derek came running out of the front doors. He didn't look like a CEO anymore. He looked like a frantic child who lost his mom in the supermarket. He sprinted toward my truck. He didn't care about the rain starting to fall. He banged on my window. Caroline opened the door. I agonizingly slowly rolled the window down 2 in, just enough for the smoke to escape. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I believe I was trespassing. I was just leaving." "Fix it," he screamed. His hair was plastered to his forehead. "Turn it back on, you broke it." "I didn't break anything, Derek," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I just left. The system requires a qualified operator. You fired the operator. I'll hire you back," he yelled. "Right now, double your salary. Just give me the code." I looked at him. I looked at the desperation in his eyes. "It's not a code, Derek. Biometric handshake coupled with a 256-bit key that resides on a USB drive that I H. Where did I put that?" I patted my pockets. "Oh, right. I surrendered all company property to security. It's probably in the incinerator bin by now." His face went pale, ghost white. You gave the key to the guards? I followed protocol, I said. Linda was very specific. Laptop and all peripherals. I'm a stickler for rules, you know that. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. But don't worry, I added. Tyler can probably code a new kernel. It should only take what? 6 months? 6 months, he whispered. We'll be bankrupt in 6 days. Sounds like a future state problem, I said. Step back, Derek. You're standing in my blind spot. I put the truck in reverse. I drove home. I stopped a drive-thru and got a burger. I ate it in my kitchen, listening to the rain hit the window. It was the best burger I'd ever tasted. It tasted like vengeance. My phone was still blowing up. I put it on Do Not Disturb for everyone except my lawyer. Oh yeah, I had a lawyer. I'd called him 3 weeks ago when the first mandatory meeting invite went out. His name was Saul, no, really. And he was a shark who smelled blood in the water before the cut was even made. At the office, things were getting biblical. According to the grapevine, Greg, bless his heart, was live tweeting the apocalypse to me via encrypted signal. The board of directors had convened an emergency Zoom call. The chairman of the board was a guy named Old Man Sterling. He was 80, ruthless, and cared about one thing, the dividend. Sterling had opened my email. Greg Sterling is on the big screen in the war room. He is purple, asking why the hell your name is on every root node of the architecture diagram. I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine and imagined the conversation. Derek Sterling would be growling, his voice like grinding gears. You told us the transition was managed. You told us the legacy tech was redundant. It is. Derek would be stammering. It's just a glitch in the authentication protocols. We're working on a bypass. There is no bypass. The CFO Marcus would I've just spoken to the vendor. They said the custom firmware on the valves was written by a co in 2014. They can't override it remotely without risking a pressure explosion. They asked to speak to the architect. She's unavailable. Derek would say, You fired her. Sterling would roar. You fired the only person who has the keys to the kingdom, and you didn't check if she left the door unlocked. The silence that followed must have been delicious. Back in my kitchen, I opened my laptop, my personal one. I pulled up a read-only view of the public pipeline data. Flow rate 0. Pressure stable locked. Status system halt. The news was starting to pick it up. A Chiron on the local news channel. Energy company reporting major outage. Prices expected to spike. My doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It wasn't Derek. It was Linda from HR, and she had a police officer with her. I smiled, predictable. I opened the door, wine glass in hand. Carol and Linda said she wasn't smiling anymore. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 hours. We need you to come back with us. Now, is that a warrant? I asked the cop. The officer, a young guy who looked bored, shook his head. Ma'am, they say you've stolen company property, intellectual property. They want it returned. I haven't stolen anything, I said. In fact, I left everything there. That's the problem, isn't it, Linda? Left too much there. You maliciously locked the system. Linda snapped. That's sabotage. I logged out. I corrected her. I followed standard security procedure, section 4.2 of the employee handbook. Employees must secure their workstations upon termination. I secured it. It's very secure. Nobody can get in. I took a sip of wine. If you want me to consult on how to unlock it, I said, you can contact my attorney. But if you come back here without a warrant, I'll have you for harassment. Officer, am I being detained? No, ma'am, the cop said. He looked at Linda. She's right. If she didn't take anything physical, this is a civil matter. I'm not dragging a lady out of her house for a computer dispute. Linda looked like she was going to scream. Millions of dollars, Caroline. We are losing millions. Sounds like you should have thought about that before you offered me 6 months severance. I said, Get off my porch, Linda. You're letting the heat out. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I went back to the kitchen and refilled my glass. The game wasn't over, but I had just won the second set. By 8 p.m., the desperation had shifted from anger to bargaining. The 5 stages of grief played out in real time via voicemail. I had 14 voicemails from Derek. Beep. Caroline, look. Things got heated. I apologize. Let's be reasonable. Beep. Caroline, please. My dad built this place. Don't destroy his legacy. Beep. I can offer you a raise, a title bump. VP of Tech. Just call me. Beep, please. The dad's legacy one almost made me throw the phone against the wall. He had the nerve to invoke Henry's name after calling his work a dinosaur. I sat at my dining table with Saul. He was eating a slice of pizza and looking at the employment contract Linda had given me earlier. This non-compete is garbage, Saul mumbled, chewing in the severance. 6 months for 20-year vet. That's insulting. I don't care about the severance, Saul, I said. I want a contract. Saul looked up. His eyes twinkled. Contract. Oh, you want to be a consultant? They need the system up, I said. They can't bring it up without the root key. The root key is in my head, they can't crack it. It uses a polymorphic encryption algorithm that changes every time you guess wrong. If they try 3 more times, it's the firmware. Nasty Saul grinned. Necessary, I said. So they need me not as an employee, as an external expert. What's your rate? Saul asked, pulling out a notepad. My old salary was $140,000 a year, I said. Chump change. So my consulting rate is $50,000 a month a day. He looked at me. Then he let out a low whistle. They're losing $100,000 an hour, I said. 50 grand is a bargain. It's a discount coupon. Okay. Saul wrote it down. What else? Full indemnity, I said. Written admission that the shutdown was caused by management error, not employees' sabotage. I want my record clean. Standard. Saul nodded. And one more thing, I said. I looked at the rain streaking the window. Derek, what about him? He goes, I said, I don't unlock the system until his resignation is signed, public, and irrevocable. He walks out the door. I walk in. Saul tapped his pen on the table. That's a big ask, Caroline. The board loves the family name, removing the heir. The heir is costing them the kingdom, I said. Sterling loves money more than he loves Henry's ghost. Draft it. We spent the next 2 hours finalizing the consulting agreement. It was a thing of beauty, brutal, efficient, and airtight. At 10:30 p.m., my phone rang. It wasn't Derek, it was Sterling, the chairman. I put it on speaker. Miss Cole. Sterling's voice was like gravel. I wasn't related to Henry, but he always called me Miss Cole out of respect. Mr. Sterling, I said, to what do I owe the pleasure? We're bleeding here, Caroline, he said. No, I respected that. The stock is going to open tomorrow morning in free fall. We need the pipeline on. I understand, I said. Complicated system. Cut the crap. Sterling snapped. What do you want? I've sent a document to your legal counsel, I said. My attorney Saul has outlined the terms for my firm to provide emergency technical support. Your firm? I just started it. I said, consulting, cleaning up chaos. I'm looking at it now. Sterling said, I heard papers rustling. Then a long silence. 50,000. Jesus Christ, Caroline, this is extortion. No, sir, I said. Supply and demand. You have a demand for gas flow. I have the supply of know-how in this. Clause 4. Sterling said, his voice dropped. The removal of the CEO. Non-negotiable, I said. He's Henry's son, Sterling said softly. He's the reason the lights are out, I replied. Henry would have fired him 6 hours ago. Silence. Long, heavy silence. If I do this, Sterling said, you can have the system up by market open. I can have it up in 10 minutes, I said. Hold on, Sterling said. The line went mute. I looked at Saul. Saul gave me a thumbs up, 5 minutes past 10. Then Sterling came back on. Come in, he said. Bring your lawyer. The drive back to the office was surreal. The rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and black. The office tower loomed ahead, dark except for the emergency red lights pulsing on the roof. It looked like a dying heart. Saul drove his Mercedes. I sat in the passenger seat wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. I hadn't changed. I wasn't dressing up for them. We walked into the lobby. It was crowded. Engineers, managers, board members who had flown in or driven down the air was thick with sweat and stale coffee. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Derek was standing near the reception desk. He looked wrecked. His tie was gone, his top button undone, his eyes bloodshot. When he saw me, he took a step forward. You, he hissed. You did this. Save it, Derek, a voice boomed. Sterling walked out of the shadows. He was leaning on a cane, but he looked like he could still bite the head off a snake. Conference roommate, Sterling said. Now we filed in. Me saw Derek, Sterling, and Marcus, the CFO. Derek slammed his hand on the table. You can't be serious. She held the company hostage. You're going to pay her. We are, Sterling said calmly. He slid a piece of paper across the table to Derek. You are going to sign this. Derek looked at the paper. Resignation for personal reasons? No. No way. I am the CEO. You are a liability, Marcus said, not looking up from her laptop. The preliminary damage report puts losses at $2.4 million for this outage alone. If we're not up by morning, we trigger the force majeure clauses in our delivery contracts. That's another $10 million. It's her fault. Derek pointed at me. I warned you, I said softly. I told you the cloud wouldn't work. I told you the documentation was outdated. I told you the system needed a legacy handshake. You called me a dinosaur and walked me out. You logged out. I did. I nodded. And you didn't have the code to log back in. That's not sabotage, Derek. That's negligence. Yours. Sterling tapped the table with his cane. Thud, thud. Sign it, Derek, Sterling said. Or we vote to remove you for cause. And if we do that, you lose your stock options. You lose the severance. You lose everything. Sign the resignation and you keep the golden parachute. Derek looked around the room. He looked at Tyler, his consultant, who was cowering in the corner. Tyler looked away. Derek looked at me. He hated me. I could feel it, but he loved money more. He grabbed a pen. He signed the paper so hard the tip tore through the page. "I hope you choke on it," he said to me. "I prefer menthols," I said. "Out," Sterling said. Derek stood up. He tried to muster some dignity, straightening his jacket. "But you can't fix a shattered ego with a suit adjustment." He walked to the door. He paused. Hand on the handle. "The company needs vision. You're just mechanics." "Mechanics keep the plane in the air, kid," I said. He left. Sterling turned to me. He looked tired. "He's gone. The wire transfer for your retainer has been initiated. Fix it." I stood up. "Saul, make sure the check clears." "I'm on it," Saul said. I walked out of the conference room. The lobby was silent. Everyone was watching me, the legacy tech, the dinosaur. I walked past the bewildered interns. I walked past the terrified ops team. I walked straight to the server room door. It was locked. "Open it," I said to the guard, the same one who had escorted me out. He swiped his badge. The door hissed open. The cold air hit me, the smell of ozone, the hum of the cooling units. "Hello, baby," whispered. "Mommy's home." The server room was dark, lit only by the blinking red leads of the distressed hardware. It felt like a tomb, but to me it felt like a temple. I walked to the main terminal. The chair was still warm from where Tyler had probably been sitting, sweating and crying. I sat down. I cracked my knuckles. The screen displayed the ominous message, "System lockdown. Root-off required." I didn't need a manual. I didn't need a blockchain. I pulled a small, worn USB drive from my keychain, the one I had in my pocket the whole time. The one Linda hadn't asked for because she didn't know it existed. It looked like a little plastic Yoda. I plugged it in. The screen flickered. Detecting hardware key verified. Enter passphrase. I typed it in. It wasn't a complex string of random characters. It was something Henry had set up years ago. A phrase only the two of us knew. "The pipe dreams at night. Enter." The screen froze for a second. The cursor blinked. Then text began to scroll fast. Green text cascading down the black screen like digital rain. Authentication successful. "Welcome back, Carolyn C. Initiating sequence. Checking pressures. Opening valves." I heard it first. A deep mechanical thunk from the floor below. The sound of the main hydraulic actuators engaging. Then the fans, the cooling fans, spun up from an idle hum to a roar. Whoosh! The red lights on the server racks turned amber. Then, one by one, they flipped to solid green. I stood up and walked out of the server room. I walked into the ops center. The giant wall of monitors was flickering back to life. The red error messages were replaced by live flow charts. The pressure readings started to climb. 0, 100, 500, 20,000 psi. "Flow restored," Greg shouted from his desk. He looked at me and grinned. He have green across the board. A cheer went up. A ragged, exhausted, terrified cheer. People were hugging. Someone was crying. Sterling was standing by the window. He turned and looked at me. He gave me a single sharp nod. Respect. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just walked to the coffee machine. It was empty. "Someone make a fresh pot," I announced to the room, "and make it strong. I'm billing for the next 8 hours." I took my cup and walked to the floor-ceiling windows looking out over the parking lot. Down below, under the orange glow of the streetlights, I saw a figure. It was Derek. He was standing next to his Porsche holding a box of his personal effects. He was looking up at the building. As he watched, the lights on the executive floor flickered and buzzed back on. The entire tower lit up against the night sky, a beacon of industry and power. He stood there in the light of the thing he tried to kill, cast out into the shadows. I took a sip of the stale dregs in my cup. "Legacy," I whispered against the glass. I turned my back on the window and went back to work. The pipeline wasn't going to balance itself. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos.